opportunity while we have the power and the force there. We're going to regret it.
Coming up next, it's a live viewer call-in program dealing with how the states are coping with providing services in the midst of the current recession. Taking your calls here in our Washington studios, Kansas Governor Joan Finney. Governor Finney is in Washington this week participating in the National Governors Association 1991 winter meeting.
Kansas Governor Joan Finney, what concerns do you have with President Bush's plan to ask Congress to allow states to administer more federally funded programs?
Well, of course, the budgets for all the states are very tight these days. And as a farm state, we're facing a change in the farm program that can certainly affect our economic base of agriculture. We are facing dramatic changes in fluctuation in the oil area. We are the ninth largest oil producer. So because of the instability in the Middle East, we're faced with that. And the budget cuts and the direction that the federal government appears to be going and continuing to go as far as states can be have a devastating effect on a number of our programs, like the highway programs, the welfare programs, and so forth.
How does a state like Kansas put together a budget during a recession?
It's, of course, I will say this, that in Kansas we do not have the ups and downs and the peaks and valleys that other states may have on the eastern seaboard, for example, because we have a more stable economy. But we're going to, of course, feel the impact of the national recession, and this will have a detrimental effect on the state treasury.
Mm-hmm. Were you part of the group that went to the White House?
Yes.
Last night, and then then met with the president again today.
Mm-hmm.
Any reaction on how? I mean, is a state like Kansas ready to administer some of these programs that you've never administered before?
Well, of course, there could be some pluses in this block grant proposal. It depends on what happens here in Washington, what the Congress does, how much flexibility they would give the states. And I can see that there could be benefits there if we are given this with no strings attached, that we could then have freedom to administer the programs and do them to the benefit of each individual state and conduct the state business, but not be hamstrung with the problems that we have today.
Governors from across the nation are in Washington this week for the 1991 winter meeting of the National Governors Association. And for this next 45 minutes, we have invited Kansas Governor Joan Finney to join us. You will see the phone numbers at the bottom of your screen if you have a question or comment about politics, about Kansas politics, about different kinds of economic issues as they affect your state, if you'd like to make some comparisons. All of those issues are on the board for right now, and we'll start taking your calls in just a few moments. Governor, this is your first term, is that correct? You were just
as governor. I've been state treasurer for 5 terms.
So this is money issues are issues that you've been dealing with for a long time?
Yes.
How, let's move to a little bit to politics. How are Democrats faring nationwide in the aftermath of these recent elections as we look ahead to 1992?
Well, I believe very well. Of course, I am a Democrat, and I've been called a populist, and actually that's what I am. I'm interested in very people-oriented, and my support came from the public. I am taking that direction as governor, working with both parties, with Republicans and Democrats in the state legislature, and I intend to carry my agenda to the people. I've been doing that, concentrating mainly on a property tax relief program, which I proposed. It's over $500 million, which is very sizable for a state like Kansas. And also I proposed public initiative. The people in Kansas don't have the opportunity to initiate laws and constitutional amendments on their own as other states in the Midwest and the West mainly do. So that's the major agenda that I'm talking about over the state. And
you mentioned, are these like referendums, like what we see in California, Oregon?
Yes. And however, the proposal that I have, the amendments to the Constitution, provide for 3 laws or 3 amendments and a 5% requirement for signatures for laws and 8% for amendments.
Why is property tax a big issue where you're from?
Well, we had a reappraisal of all the property in Kansas here in 1989, and also the classification of property was changed, and so this had a devastating effect on our small businesses. And 90% of the business in Kansas is composed of 9 employees or less. And the property tax was shifted to these businesses and to many homeowners. So this has to be adjusted, and I believe with the cooperation of the legislature, we'll get that done this year.
First term Governor Joan Finney, a Democrat of Kansas, our guest for the next 35 minutes. Let's go ahead and go to the phones. Bakersfield, California, you're first up. Hello.
Hi, Connie. And you too, Ms. Finney. My question kind of goes with the past guest, and that was Mr. Miller. On all these different programs that we have billions and billions of dollars that are allotted to, it seems like they go asking, there's a lot of people don't ask for the money and it goes back into the budget or whatever. What happens to that money and how is it accounted for?
You mean the agencies don't ask for the money?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
You mean agencies don't ask for the money? I'm not sure.
No, I mean when a citizen, say you have grants and different programs that are allocated to the people, like student loans. What happens to that money? I mean, if it's not used, there was a big to-do about people saying there was no money in the budget for education. They said they cut the budget when they really didn't, and yet this it just went back into the budget or wherever. Where does it disappear to? And why isn't is it taken off? Why don't we just reduce the budget? Is our budget really an actual thing, or is it, you know what I'm getting at?
Okay, thanks very much. We were talking earlier about the new federal budget. Are there ever monies in budgets that don't get used?
Yes, but in the state budget, those will be discontinued from fiscal year to fiscal year. And some of them, the monies that are encumbered, will carry over. And of course, the one area where there is a great deal of federal money is the trust funds for the highways. And this is something that I believe if the states could have this for their use, then that would certainly be beneficial to the states. We could have it invested and I believe earn a higher rate for the states if we had that opportunity to use this money, which is held in trust for the individual states.
Edwardsville, Illinois, you're next. Good evening.
Hi, Governor Finney. I'm not real sure, but I've heard you are, on the abortion issue, you are pro-life. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, good, because I, like you, am a Democrat, probably maybe even a little further left than you, but I'm also pro-life, too. And my question is, I kind of find it disturbing that the Democrats get classified and sort of characterized as the pro-choice group, and the Republicans as the pro-life group. And I find it a little disturbing. Do you see on the Democratic side, do you see any trends as far as the abortion issue goes, or is it pretty much every man or woman for himself or herself?
Well, of course, I believe the fact that I was elected and made a difference on the national level, too, because as a Democrat, as a pro-life candidate, this was a little rarity, and being a woman, too, I think was a factor in there that was sort of unique and a unique combination. But I have told the people of Kansas that I won't initiate legislation, but I will sign any bill that restricts abortion. We do have the most liberal law in the entire nation, and abortions can be and are performed in the 8th and 9th month. And this, of course, concerned me, and I believe that a civilized society must place a high value on life. But there may be a trend as far as the Democratic Party. This has always been part of the platform, the abortion amendment in the Democratic Party platform in recent years. And so it may change. I believe that people are becoming a little more aware of the problem.
There are now 3 women governors, is that correct?
Yes.
Governor Roberts of Oregon, Governor Richards of Texas, and yourself. Is that
right?
All new.
Connie, yes.
Grand Rapids, Michigan, you're next.
Hello.
Hello.
I have 2 things that I wanted to comment on, and one of them is abortion, for instance. I'm an anti-abortionist, and I work big in Bay County and Saginaw counties against abortion. However, I find out many of the churches that are riding in on this now with the Republican Party, at that time they were opposed to it because they said it was a Catholic issue. And, of course, I argued back in them days it was a human rights issue. And the thing of it is, that bothers me, is how many times is the Republican Party going to ride into office on the same horse? Because they've used this thing. Reason we have abortion, the United States Supreme Court ruled that abortion was legal, and we have more appointees to the United States Supreme Court by the Republican Party than we do by the Democratic Party, and yet they keep using this thing to ride into office. Now, we had 2 presidents. The last 2 presidents we've had were anti-abortionists. We elected them to office. Did abortion stop? No. And the next trip around, is abortion going to stop if we elect another Republican? No. I think that they're using this to sidetrack the real issues, the homeless, and the real problems that are out in the street.
And your second point, caller?
Okay, my second point is, I hope the Congress of the United States does not give an inch on this capital gains tax cut, because they've robbed the people of their unions and everything else, the working class of people, and now they're making tremendous profits, and they don't want to have to pay taxes on it. Let them pay a decent wage to the people, and then they won't have to worry about paying so much taxes on it.
Okay, thanks very much, Michigan. We talked a lot about capital gains in the previous show. You have any, what's your position on that?
Well, of course, I would support a capital gains tax, but that's not a state issue, as you know.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any comment on his point on abortion?
Well, his point on abortion, I believe that he may be correct in the fact that the Republican Party has used this issue frequently to divert attention from some of the serious fiscal problems and other economic problems that the nation has.
You beat an incumbent, Governor Hayden, is that correct?
Yes.
And what was his position on abortion?
he was pro-choice.
So you were both on the same side of it? He was pro-choice?
Yes.
So it was...
And I also defeated a former governor of Kansas who was pro-choice in the primary, and then again in the general.
Governor Carlin, is that correct?
Yes.
Lawrence, Kansas, you're next. Go ahead.
Governor Finney, pleased to be speaking to you from home of the Jayhawks. And,
Good.
we would like you to address the issue of redistricting that's coming up. Since you're a Democratic governor and we have 2 Republican senators and Lawrence has a Democratic congressman, I wonder if you'd care to comment on the prospects for redistricting in Kansas and the rest of the country.
All right. Well, I'm pleased to hear from a Jayhawker. I got to go over there here a week ago to see the Lady Jayhawks play Kansas State, and the night before I was over at Kansas State and saw that game. They were both great games. In regard to the situation, now I got off the track of the redistricting. I'm going to meet in the morning with the congressional delegation from Kansas. And so we will, of course, I'm sure that this is something that we'll be reviewing along with other problems that relate to the state. And this reapportionment is, we're going to, as you know, lose one of our 5 congressmen. So I will take a good hard look at the entire picture, and we'll try to do what I believe is fair and in the interests of all the people, and do it as fairly and upfront as I possibly can.
As you've been here for the National Governors Association, is redistricting a topic that's come up a lot over this past weekend?
It's come up some. It came up some yesterday, and then again today in meetings, just incidentally.
Let's go to Las Vegas next. Hello.
Good morning, afternoon rather. My questions are 2, Governor. What do you think that the recent vote in Nevada, which by 63% to 37%, we decided to keep the choice-allowing abortion bill law that's in effect in Nevada. By those numbers, do you think it's the same nationwide, since we're all getting roughly the same news? And I also would like to inquire of what you think of candidate Al Gore for president next year.
Caller, before we leave you, I want to make sure that we understood what your percentage was in Nevada and exactly what you did there.
Okay, we had a referendum. We were afraid that the governor and legislature was going to put a restrictive bill in that seemed to be the trend of the country. So we took it out of their hands by passing a referendum by 63 to 37%, retaining the law. They will have to come back and beat us in a referendum if they're going to put a restrictive abortion law across and take the choice out of the hands of the individual women.
So the current law that you have there in Nevada is very pro-choice?
Well, it allows choice, very pro-choice. Yeah, all right, very pro-choice, yeah.
Okay, I didn't mean to make you qualify that. Your reaction?
Well, of course, in regard to that issue as it pertains to my state of Kansas, I believe that if the people of Kansas understand that we do have these very liberal abortion laws, I don't honestly believe that they'd go along with it. And if we had a referendum, that would make a difference, and the law would be restricted. How restricted, I don't know. That, of course, would be left with the people. And then in response to your question about Senator Al Gore, I was very pleased to support him in the last presidential primary. I think that Al Gore is a very intelligent member of Congress, and I believe that he possibly will be on the scene here in next year in the presidential primary, and I would be proud to again back him. We'll see who the leading candidates are.
Let's go to Greensburg, Pennsylvania next. Hello.
Hello. I have 2 parts. One is the Department of Agriculture. Don't you really think it's about time that the Department of Agriculture got out of subsidies? Let the farmers have their own co-op and sell worldwide their product.
And your second point, caller?
The second point is abortion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think that abortion is a governmental thing. I think really, regardless of churches, religion, or otherwise, every woman that is pregnant that thinks about an abortion should be notified of one thing. This is between her and her God. And if she wishes to take a chance of losing her soul to hell, I think it's up to her. Individual rights.
Okay, thanks, Pennsylvania. Take those two issues.
All right, in regard to the Department of Agriculture subsidies, we must remember that we, the American people, enjoy the cheapest food prices on earth. And if we're going to continue to have these low costs in food as compared to other nations, then we're going to have to pay for it either in taxes or at the grocery store. So it's going to be a trade-off either way. The farmers are only getting between $2 and $2.40 for a bushel of wheat. They just simply cannot make their costs. And in recent years, we've had a grand exodus of family farmers from the farm. And as this has occurred, then the larger companies take over these farms, and that's a problem that we have is with worldwide distribution. We can sell our commodities, but we cannot transport them. The larger companies, Cargill and Conti Grain, will not let us carry them from the port. So it's a trend that we've had in farming. This is not new, but it has accelerated in recent years, and it really has a devastating effect on Middle America and on farm prices generally.
A little bit of background on Governor Finney. She, as she said earlier, served 5 terms as the state treasurer of Kansas, the first woman to serve as state treasurer of that state. Prior to that, she was administrative assistant to the mayor of Topeka, the capital city there, in 1973 and 74. She was commissioner of elections for Shawnee County, Kansas, and served for 16 years on the staff of former United States Senator Frank Carlson. Let's go next to Richmond, Virginia. You're next. Hello.
Yes, I just want to say to Governor Finney that she's now speaking to a lifelong Republican, one who has never in his entire life voted for a Democrat for anything. But I want to say that, Governor Finney, if I were in your state, that I would break my record and vote for you. I admire you highly, and I certainly appreciate you for taking a pro-life stance in the Democrat Party, almost unheard of, and I appreciate it so much, and I hope this trend continues, and may God bless you.
Oh, well, God love you, and I hope someday you'll come to Kansas and see me. Your comment means more than you'll ever know.
With the politics, does politics make it difficult for your abortion stand? I mean, because we talked earlier, you know, that usually it's the flip, if you want to talk usually. Have you found any recourse by your party or anything because of your stand on abortion?
Oh, no, I really think I've been in politics so many years, Connie, that I think you do what you believe is right, and the people will trust you. I am very pro-woman, and I've appointed a number of women to high posts in government in the few weeks that I've been in office, and I intend to do that. I think that women need help economically, and so I will do everything I can to help women, but I think that you just have to have certain principles that you believe in, and each individual must make their own decision.
Cathedral City, California, go ahead. You're on with the governor.
Yes, Governor. You and I have never met. I lived in Kansas for about 18 years, developed a small business in Kansas City, Kansas. It was successful. Sold it about 7 or 8 years ago and kept a nice piece of property that I had $360,000 invested in. And in their wisdom, the voters of the state of Kansas engineered that tax reappraisal, so to speak. And this is probably academic, but you made a remark that there might be some hope of a cure for this problem. It's too late for me. I had a $180,000 equity in this property, and just less than a week ago, I accepted $5,000 for my equity in it because I couldn't afford to pay the taxes. My tenants wouldn't pay an increase in rent. I lost one of them. So the man who occupied half of that building acquired what is essentially the major part of my estate for taking over the note and giving me $5,000 and paying the back taxes. They raised the taxes, I might add, from roughly $4,000 a year to $16,000 a year.
Caller, can you make the comparison with California?
I beg your pardon?
Can you make a comparison with California? Can you make a comparison with California?
Oh, yeah. Everything out here is based on 1% of assessed value, appraised value.
Mm-hmm.
But okay. when they raise the taxation on commercial property, irrespective of income on it or other factors, when it went from 12% to 30% of assessed value, of appraised value, then it made it economically impossible.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, thanks very much for the call. Your reaction?
Mm-hmm. That's the serious problem that I'm addressing, and that's why I have proposed that we give property tax relief to every Kansas taxpayer, and the amount that I proposed is about $560 million, and it would this year result in a 24% rollback for every piece of property in the state. And then next year, because we'll be able to collect in a full year, it should be the 30% that I promised in the campaign. To finance this, we will have to take the exemptions away from state sales taxes for most of the exemptions that we have. We have 56 groups that now have an exemption from the sales tax rate, which in Kansas is 4.25%, as you know. And there are 64 other groups who do pay taxes. So there's a great inequity there. And then, of course, not addressed and not included in either group are a number of services. So I'm proposing that we close these loopholes, that we shift from the property taxes, this $500 million, and move that over to the removing the sales tax exemptions. It's my understanding that from visiting with other governors that by the turn of the century, no state will have any exemptions in state sales taxes. But I have told the legislature that if they don't agree with my manner of funding this rollback, which must come for property taxes because of the effect it's having on our economy, this raise in taxes that you've addressed. I've told them that if the legislators don't want to fund it that way, then they can come up with another proposal, put the options on the table, and I'll certainly look at every one of them. But that's where we stand now, and I know that we must have property tax relief. This is affecting our bond ratings and just this matter of reappraisal and classification. So in the interest of the entire state economy, we're going to press very hard to roll back our taxes on property.
15 minutes left with our guest. St. Petersburg, Florida. You're next with the governor.
Thank you.
Go ahead. St. Petersburg, ask your question.
St. Petersburg.
Yes, go ahead.
Governor, what is your difficulties with the gas and oil plants for Kansas?
Caller, I'm sorry, you're going to have to be a little bit more, you're going to have to speak up a little bit more because we're having a little hard time understanding you. Your question, please. Sorry, you hung up. Let's try again. Kansas City, Kansas, you're next.
Yes, Governor Finney?
Yes.
Can you tell me what your position is on the Senate Bill number 27?
Caller, you're going to have to help the rest of us out with that. What is that bill?
That is to eliminate the mandate for the gifted education in the state of Kansas. This is very important for our children in this state, and you're wanting to get rid of that mandate and the funding to save $8.5 million a year for the state of Kansas? What is your position on that?
All right. In regard to the gifted appropriation, you see, during the past year, the state expended $128 million more than it took in. And during the past 2 years, we spent $250 million more than we received in revenue. This cannot continue. We will be in the black. The cupboard is bare. State finances are in serious trouble. So I believe that if the local governments want to continue this program, and they well made, then they can fund it on the local level, but it's just a matter that the state coffers do not have the money. And we have to prioritize. We have the needs, many needs throughout the state here that must be covered. We have homeless. We're trying to not create more homeless by the cuts that were made in SRS. And so it's just a matter of priorities. It's not that it's a very fine program, but I hope local governments will pick this up.
This is a chart from the Christian Science Monitor, which takes a look at the states and puts a colored dot on them as it looks at the projected surpluses or deficits for fiscal year 1991. If it's a black on your state, there's supposed to be a projected surplus. A green means a projected on target. An orange means a projected deficit, and the dark red means a projected deficit of more than $500 million or more than 5% of the original appropriations. And they have you as projected on target in Kansas.
Well, it's we might have to visit with them a little bit about this. But as I said, Connie, the state of Kansas and Middle America in general, we have a little more stable situation. And we are on the cash basis law where we cannot go into debt. But if we continue on the trend that we're going right now, we will be in trouble.
Out to the West Coast again. Beverly Hills, California. Hello.
Hello. At the night of the election, I was kind of excited that when I heard that the governorship of Kansas had been won by a Democrat. But I must say that your position on abortion really disappointed me. With all the problems that we have out there, the crime and the drugs and the economic problems that we're facing, don't you think that we could save a lot of energy, time, resources by just educating people and being in the forefront of sex education, family planning, educating people about birth control? I'd like to know, Governor, have you taken any kind of position on any of those stands, and do you intend to?
I kind of lost your comment there at the last.
Sure. He asked specifically about sex education, family education, and whether you have any positions on that.
Well, of course, I think that it's important that we inform our young people about the dangers, particularly as they relate to the diseases like AIDS and these many problems that are affecting society. And but again, I'll say that my position on pro-life is a personal feeling that I just believe that as a civilized society, we must place a high value on life, and in these other areas we've got to, of course, consider the matter of education.
Governor, on live television, we've got these little earpieces, and yours is flipped a little, and I think that's why you didn't hear the last caller. I'd give you a chance to go ahead and put that back in as we take your next call, because we want to make sure you can hear this one from Manhattan, Kansas. You're next. Hello.
Yes, Governor. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, I was calling. I'd like to know about your stance on keeping Fort Riley viable.
Yeah.
And if it is on the hit list to close in the years to come, what would you do to keep it a viable place, and giving the 1st Infantry Division land to train on so that it can train its men properly to do the mission that they are now having to do in the Gulf?
Caller, what's all at Fort Riley for the rest of us?
Oh, what's at Fort Riley?
Mm-hmm. What is all there now?
It's a, well, it's an infantry division consisting of an armor and mechanized infantry and all the support that goes with that.
And it has been on a target list to be shut down?
Well, the rumors have had it that it is to be closed.
Okay.
And that has a good number of us here in Manhattan and Junction City very concerned.
Okay, thanks very much, Governor.
Fort Riley, of course, is and has been through the years very vital to the economy of not only the Riley County, Geary County area, but the entire state of Kansas. And in regard to the proposal to take over that land, it becomes a matter of farmland, the farm economy versus the local economy from the military. However, they have discontinued the efforts that they were talking about here earlier in the year. And this is one of the subjects that I intend to discuss tomorrow with the members of the Kansas delegation in Congress and see if there's anything that has developed recently. As you know, the Big Red One is now serving in the Middle East, and it's of great concern to us, this matter of keeping the fort there. That and Fort Leavenworth and McConnell Air Base are extremely vital to the future of the state and the economic well-being of Kansas. We'll try to do everything we can to keep this functioning.
New York City, you're next up with Kansas Governor Joan Finney.
Governor, congratulations on your victory last November.
Thank you.
I have listened to you tonight very attentively about the comments you've had about abortion, and you have argued very persuasively about the sanctity of life in a civilized society in regard to life. What would you have to say about capital punishment, and as governor, what will you do about those inmates on death row?
All right. I do not believe in capital punishment personally. I have told the people and made the commitment to the Kansas people that if the legislature does send me a bill, I will send it back to them, which would in effect let it become law, but send it back to them, tell them to send this to the people and let the people make this decision. Capital punishment has strong support in Kansas, but there again, that's a personal conviction that I feel strongly about. But being what I refer to as a populist, I believe that the people are supreme in all things.
Has Kansas had capital punishment in the recent history?
Yes, we did. I think it's been about 2 decades since we had that law, and it was repealed about 20 years ago.
Washington, D.C., you're next. Hello.
Hello, Governor. I'm calling from Washington, D.C., but I'm originally a resident of Hays, Kansas.
Oh.
And I wanted to ask you what plans you have or what programs you plan to put in place to improve education in the state, both in the elementary schools and among the state colleges and universities. And I also wanted to ask that since your last election was against 2 rather unpopular politicians, do you think there will be any problems of being viewed as a lame duck governor, and what your outlook is for your next election?
Okay, my outlook, I frankly, I believe that I will be in there 8 years. I told the members of the media a number of times that I would be nominated and that I would be elected. I just sort of sensed this, and I have this sense about the 8 years, right or wrong. I believe that's the way it's going to be. And in regard to education, we have children who go to school the first day and can't tell you their first name. I believe that we've got to spend some money on the programs of parenting, preschool, all of the early elementary grades, and to give our children some self-esteem, self-confidence, and we can save money on the other end of the spectrum. 4 of the 5 teenagers in juvenile court today cannot read or write. We have 10,000 illiterates in the city of Topeka, and they're not all in the State House either. But we have this problem of building prisons and the expense there in that end of the spectrum. If we can save in the early by investing early, so the more that we can put into education and help our teachers. I don't think we can blame the teachers. They get these kids, if we don't have them by grade 4, then they're lost and they turn to crime and to drugs. In regard to higher education, I have proposed in my budget an appropriation for the third and final year of funding for the margin of excellence, which would bring our faculty salaries up to 80% of the national average. We have some excellent universities in Kansas and highly rated nationally. And so this is very important. Also, I have a program that this year I want to get started and put in place, working with our presidents of the universities, the chancellor at KU, and I'm calling it Creating Tomorrow. And it will involve every facet of life in Kansas. We have a great, beautiful state and wonderful people, and we're going to use all of those talents, combine them, use the universities as a focal point, the state of Kansas, the cabinet, the legislature. We will be the facilitator, but it's going to include private business, the educational system. We're going to study all of this, and we will create tomorrow in Kansas.
Governor, we want to take a quick last call from Manhattan, Kansas. Go ahead.
Just a real quick question. In particular, with the precarious budget, what would happen to the role of special education in that situation? Especially, particularly, you mentioned gifted, but the other areas too.
Okay, thanks, Manhattan. Special education.
All right, special education, I have proposed that that be funded in the budget. And these are the kids who are desperately in need of help, and hopefully the gifted program, which is the child who can certainly does need help, but they're special of a different type, and that can be funded on the local level, but the state will continue the aid to special education.
At the 1991 National Governors Association winter meeting taking place in Washington, we've had the chance over the past several days to introduce you to some of the governors. And tonight, for the last 45 minutes, we've had Governor Joan Finney, a Democrat of Kansas. Thanks very much for joining us.
Connie, thank you.
And thanks to our viewers. Have a nice evening.
That concludes this program with Kansas Governor Joan Finney. And now a programming note to be with us tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time for live coverage of a Senate Banking Committee hearing on the federal budget. Giving testimony will be the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, Dick Darman. Coming up next, it's today's British military briefing on Operation Desert Storm.